Welcome, everybody. My name is John Stack. I'm Executive Director of the School of International and Public Affairs and Associate Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences. And I just wanted to come up and welcome our distinguished guests to Florida International University. Rebecca Friedman and Christine Calais have done a magnificent job in building our European Union Center together with our colleagues at the University of Miami, so it's always a pleasure to come to these annual conferences. The quality of the speakers is simply excellent, and the proof of that is the edited books that have appeared as a result of the conferences. So not only does our association with the European Union Centers of Excellence advance our teaching mission, both at FIU and in the high schools, but also our research capacity. So again, welcome. This is a modest introduction, but it's heartfelt, and we welcome you to a beautiful day in Florida. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the person who has brought our European Union Center of Excellence to such heights, and that is Dr. Rebecca Friedman, who I work with. It's a pleasure to introduce you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, John, for such a lovely introduction. Before I introduce our distinguished guest today, let me just say a few thank yous. Oh, hi, Marcus. Thank you. You were my first thank you. First of all, thank you to Marcus Teal, who always helps me and sometimes takes the lead on planning all of these events. So you actually were my first thank you, Marcus. Also, I want to thank the Department of Politics and International Relations for supporting this, thank the College of Arts and Sciences, and of course thank the School for International and Public Affairs and John Stack for supporting this event. I also want to thank Christine Calais, who is the one who stays in the office until 10, 11 at night, getting everything done and making sure everything works perfectly. So thank you as always, Christine. We can't do it without you. She gets a round of applause. Thank you. Okay. Let me now introduce our very distinguished speaker, who's going to kick off what I think will be a really productive day tomorrow. I'm going to introduce you, and my French is not great, so I'm doing my best here, which is Valerie Rouxel-Laxton, who is the head of economic and financial affairs for the delegation of the European Union to the U.S. in Washington, D.C. So we're so honored to have the head of the section here with us today to share her ideas. She is the one we hoped would come, and here she is. So thank you for being here. Valerie is an economist, and as I said, she heads the Economic and Financial Affairs section at the delegation. She's responsible for many things, as I understand it, including for analyzing and reporting on macroeconomic developments in the US and in the EU, and representing, of course, the EU on economic matters in the US. That is no small job to have these days, or really any days. Okay. Before coming to Washington, she worked for the European Commission's Economic Service in Brussels, specializing in international economic issues, forecasting, and European integration. In this capacity, she's written and delivered presentations on a number of economic issues, including the current economic situation, global imbalances, and labor market developments. She holds her PhD in international economics from the Graduate Institute in Geneva, a Master's of Science degree in political science and international relations from the Political Institute in Lyon in France. She also was so kind to come back. She was here earlier, I have to say this year, helping us in educating our students and our teachers for our annual Euro Challenge event. So she was our keynote speaker there as well. So thank you so much for making the trip yet again. Today, she will talk with us about innovation and competitiveness in Europe, and I, for one, am looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And let me also thank you, Rebecca Friedman from Florida University, and Christine Cayley, of course, for hosting this event. I think it's really, a great occasion and an excellent opportunity for us to exchange. I'd like to start off on a light note. Switzerland is a small country in the middle of Europe, and that's where I earned my PhD, actually, in Geneva. And it is not a member of the European Union. And when looking at the World Economic Forum's ranking of the most competitive countries in the world, well, Switzerland comes first. And then I asked myself, well, what did the European Union get wrong? Okay, it stands out in the middle, not being member of the EU, and yet it is the most competitive country in the world. Well, we have a single market in the EU among 27 countries. It brings together 27 people with the free movement of people, goods, capital, etc. in a single market, and yet the issue is to become an innovative union. An innovative union, yes. So it comes as no surprise that the EU has made innovation one of the flagship initiatives of its 2020 strategy. You've heard of the 2020 strategy, I suppose. It's part of our policy planning because in a very short period of time, globalized economies have changed the world's economic order, bringing new opportunities, certainly, and also new challenges. So Europe has to compete in this much more complex environment. In order to do so, it has to innovate more. So the issues that will be debated here today and tomorrow are truly at the heart of what Europe and the United States have to imagine for themselves. The future lies ahead in constructing a vision about our future. Where do we want to invest with a 10, 20, 30-year horizon? And not only short-term firefighting, which is taking up a lot of our time. Let me explain what I mean. The US and Europe are still healing from the very deep recession of 2009. And of course, we need to find solutions to our current challenges that are very large, be it the ripples of debt and financial crisis in Europe, or the budget deadlines in the United States. And it is crucial to manage these episodes appropriately. But if we are to build a sounder economy and lay the foundations for the societies we aspire to uphold in the 21st century and beyond, much more is at stake. And we need to think how longer-term sustainable growth can be supported. Future generations deserve that our generation thinks these challenges through in a much more forward-looking manner and deal with them efficiently. And as much as economists will all find different recipes to generate long-term growth, they'll probably agree on a bottom line that could sound like this. Innovation is the main driver of long-term economic growth. Moreover, investment in research and development and economic growth are positively correlated. And in Europe, countries like Sweden, Finland, Germany, Denmark, but also France, Austria, are well placed and good examples of this correlation. That is to say that R&D, research development, and innovation will help us out of the current recession in the euro area, the current stagnation in Europe, and out of slow growth in the United States. So, what does it take for our generation to do? What are we to do about this? Well, it must require imaginative action by the public sector in a very constrained environment financially, to provide incentives for innovation, And it involves also imagination in terms of our education policies, trade policies as well, in a globalized world, which offer, again, opportunities but challenges too. And in the private sector, it implies making education work and rewarding skills, higher skills, but also specific skills, more specific skills. I'm thinking of those geared to niche markets or very specific skills that are now required in manufacturing activities. So Europe and the US need to work together on these longer-term perspectives and what kind of future we're building for our societies. All the more so, as we have recently announced the decision to start talking about a Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership, the TTIP, that's the way we call it. And this is a good development because the EU and the US have a lot to offer one another. We have skilled workforces, good infrastructure, services, you name it. And it's only through innovation that both sides of the Atlantic will increase competitiveness. By working together, we'll boost our competitiveness, create jobs, and will support economic growth. We're facing common challenges as we are both struggling, as I said, to overcome difficult economic hurdles. Both our economies are going through very large transformations in the aftermath of what has been a rather unique global financial crisis. The damage from this crisis is still being felt, and we struggle to strengthen our financial systems so that this never happens again. And as much as financial innovations had, in a way, encouraged risky behavior in the markets, innovative tools can be put in place and are being put in place in Europe and in the US, and a new, stronger financial architecture is being created and is helping us to heal. And a new and a sounder financial environment is essential for generating the kind of investment and the financing for longer-term projects, and research depends on these longer-term projects. Now, in which fields? Well, fields that we will be definitely needing in the future, in the area of health, because we have aging populations, age-related diseases, modern diseases such as diabetes or obesity, they are common challenges to the EU and the US. Access to secure, affordable supplies of energy, that's another important common issue. We have huge challenges because of our dependence, increasing and growing dependence on information, communications technologies, cybersecurity is a concern, and adapting to climate change is an imperative. While the EU and the US have common economic and social challenges, we're also uniquely placed to take up these challenges together. As world leaders in research and innovation, we are really each other's indispensable partners. And it's up to us to go for the high road to sustainable growth. The EU translated this into a target, because we like working with targets. In the EU, there's a target of 3% of GDP that must be invested in R&D by 2020, by the year 2020. And this means combined public and private investment in R&D. Well, the Union's 500 million people are responsible for about a quarter of the world's expenditure in research, about 30% of high-impact publications, scientific publications, and 30% of patent applications. We win a great proportion of Nobel Prizes, we have renowned centers of excellence, we're producing breakthroughs in basic and applied sciences. I don't know if you've heard of the CERN. This is also a place where that I visited when I was a student and made a great impression on me when, CERN scientists discovered the Higgs Boson last year. And it was a great breakthrough, for our knowledge of the universe. And it only depends on research excellence that we have in Europe, as well as in the United States. And we have networks of world-class researchers that make really outstanding contributions to resolving leading scientific questions that we still have. And we have leading universities, of course, all around Europe. Sorry, something's flying around me. As you also have leading universities all over the United States. So, turning to the private sector, industry in Europe continues to show its willingness to invest in science, research and technology, especially in the face of our continuing economic crisis, actually. EU companies have maintained and continue to maintain their investment in research and innovation because they understand that this is the way to retain a competitive edge. Investment increased by 8.9% in 2011, up from 6% in the previous year. This is the latest data I have. So this increase has also matched US firms, investment by US firms at 9% in 2011. That said, we are not at our target of spending 3% of GDP in R&D by 2020. And businesses invest a lot more in countries such as Japan, South Korea. So we have a lot to do still. However, R&D intensity is progressing in Europe. So Europe is still an attractive place for our partners to come and do research and innovate. And their larger member states are usually the main attractive places in Europe, but Ireland is also an example of this. And it's true on many levels. There's not one yardstick to measure attractiveness in Europe. It's not only because of our capabilities and opportunities for research and innovation that people come and invest in Europe, but it's also I would say attractiveness is also a function of different factors like lifestyle, deep, diverse arts and culture, vibrant cities, and many other appealing country-specific characteristics of our diverse 27 member states. So the circulation of knowledge, shared experiences and exchange of ideas between researchers in that community can help in fine, businesses gain an edge and also boost economic growth. The economic crisis has actually hit R&D investment hard. So as part of the counter-cyclical effort, many of our member states have maintained their investment in R&D funding. Actually, 17 member states have continued to maintain their levels of public funding for R&D. And also private R&D has been resilient in companies to maintain this competitive edge. There exist multiple present and future opportunities within our member states and at EU level. So in addition to actions that are undertaken by the member states, the European level can support innovation and this innovative union that we wish to create. The EU's structural funds, for instance, they support research, technology, development and innovation. And the amounts invested in research and development have more than doubled to around 70 billion euros a year. About 25% of the total of the budget of our structural funds is devoted to research and development. That is, if we compare the beginning of the years 2000s to the period at the end of the years 2000s. We have programming periods of 7 years, and if you compare those two programming periods, the amounts devoted to R&D have doubled. We have European-wide enterprise networks, where companies can seek advice for accessing venture capital and funding. They also get advice on EU funding, EU-level funding. On tax credits, we help clarify procedures, and that has also been proven helpful in the past years. So looking ahead, the Council of the EU recently decided on the level of the European Union's budget for the years 2014 to 2020. That is what our help depends on, an EU budget. The overall budget was subject to cuts, as you might expect. But the only area that received a substantial increase was research and innovation. This is because our member states recognize the link between investment in science, technology, innovation, and competitiveness, productivity, economic growth on the other hand. Okay? So what we have for forthcoming programming periods to build this innovative union is a project called Horizon 2020. It's the new framework program for research and innovation, which will run from 2014 to 2020. Although the shape and size of that program is still being debated and has to be agreed, the aims of this program are really to simplify EU research funding and funding for innovation, to have a common vision and achieve breakthroughs more rapidly, reduce the time to market of research and innovation breakthroughs, because that is very important, and reduce the complexity of EU funding rules. And this is really the financial instrument that we have at EU level, again, to secure Europe's contribution to competitiveness. And it should amount to roughly 80 billion euros of the budget for that programming period. But walking towards this new program at European level, we also are developing what we call the European Research Area. It's mimicked on the idea of having a single market. It's actually there to create a single market for knowledge and technology. And throughout our area, that is a large area of 27 member states, it will strengthen scientific and technological bases, the competitiveness, the capacity to collectively address global challenges, in particular because it will reinforce the collaboration between our member states. And broadly speaking, the aim is to maximize investment in research, encourage cross-border links, and facilitate the access to scientific knowledge and joint programming of projects. Okay. In addition to that, and in particular because SMEs have been hard hit during this crisis, we have a program which is specific for SMEs. It has a strange acronym. It's called COSME, C-O-S-M-E, really to help SMEs grow worldwide. There's an internal dimension to it within the single market, but also an international dimension to it. We help SMEs advance their international projects. The main function is to improve access to finance, where it has been impaired during the financial crisis, and enable the absorption of new technologies, really targeted on SMEs. And because also SMEs perform better in the US than in the EU, we have to step up our efforts for our small and medium-sized enterprises. Some parts of the EU perform much better in comparison to the US, namely countries like Denmark, Finland, Belgium, Austria, and Sweden are really, investing a lot in R&D already at the level of SMEs. But others are lagging behind. So these are the countries that we are trying to focus on. So the focus of this specific program for SMEs will also be targeted because we want to develop industrial capabilities in enabling technologies like nanotechnologies, advanced materials, biotech, advanced manufacturing and processing. So all these very specific areas. For that, we will have dedicated financial instruments that will help SMEs finance themselves through equity. We'll provide venture capital for these enterprises, loan guarantees to cover for their loans when they are taking up loans. And all that will be managed by the European Investment Fund in collaboration with national institutions. There'll also be a one-stop shop for SMEs, so that they can bring together we bring together all the support organizations so that SMEs come and they obtain information free of charge, guidance, customized advice on EU funding opportunities, because that is always a complex network of information that they need to decipher somehow. We'll improve the competitiveness of those SMEs by reducing the administrative burden on them, and will offer advice for internationalizing abroad. First, going abroad within the single market, going in a different country within the 27 area, the area of 27 member states, but also will offer tailor-made information about the business environment in third countries. And I have to add that one of the disadvantages for SMEs in the past that emerged really from our surveys was the cost of patenting. Compared to other countries, our cost of patenting was very high. And for SMEs, it was sometimes very, very difficult to cover for these costs. So this will come down substantially because in December 2012, the member states in the EU agreed to a European patent, which will reduce the cost of a patent from around 36,000 euros to 6,500 euros. So it's really substantial for SMEs, this reduction in costs. The aim of this Horizon 2020 is really to develop broad range and put together a broad range of different disciplines to adopt a kind of multidisciplinary approach to knowledge and producing capital-intensive goods and services. And basically that's what both the EU and US should be very good at. We should really be boosting our engagement with industry, including with SMEs, providing them with access to finance and promoting public and private partnerships so that they can grow, basically. The development of skills and of these key specific technologies will be at the core of this programming period, because this is the way to the future. So it makes sense to think about such challenges at European level, transcending our national level. It also makes sense to think more globally, with our American partners notably. Through this Horizon 2020 strategy, we really want to develop a competitiveness, tackle global problems, and support EU policies. And if we're going to grow our economies in that way, provide quality jobs, and solve some of our global issues, hopefully, there is an imperative for global, or at least cooperation with our key partners. And when it comes to competitiveness and making great breakthroughs to solve these societal issues that I referred to earlier, it really means working with one of our most natural partner, and it means working across the Atlantic. Working with the US is completely natural, and this is thanks to very old and well-established scientific and technological networks in the world. Scientists and thinkers around the world, and especially across the Atlantic, co-publish articles, co-publish research and books, and co-patent in the case of producing patents in the business sector. And we benefit from, doctoral exchanges very much. It's a very intense exchange across the Atlantic. But overall, thanks to shared values, we're already working together on the world stage. And in particular, we've begun to cooperate to help maintain and improve global standards in the conduct of science, ethics, integrity, open access to scientific results, open access to databases. Also in my field, I see this in economics. The access to data is very important. And it's also apparent in our promotion of mutually recognized standards and also global standards when it comes to maintaining sound business practices, sound business environments, and all in all, a level playing field around the world. By acting together, the EU and the US can promote this level playing field and reach for the high road, high standards, and high quality growth. We must also do so in the realm of global trade, global investments. We have common international partners, and so we share an interest to encourage, this high road and the observance of a very high standard worldwide. Let me finish by saying that whenever they have had the means and the opportunity to do so, scientists on both sides of the Atlantic and in every nation within the EU cross borders to, team up with other scientists and publish and write together and make discoveries together. And they are mobile, very mobile. I think the scientists is one of the most mobile group of professionals in the world, I would say. The EU will use its new strategy, the Horizon 2020, to provide means and opportunities to continue and pursue these exchanges. And we are, of course, committed to do so with the US in order, in fine, to boost trade, investment, leading to more jobs and boost economic growth, but also to develop our ability to compete in a globalized world and to address together the common global challenges. If the EU and the US cooperate further in research and innovation, well, the result is for our economies to lift themselves to a higher growth path. Europe and the US need to work together on those longer-term perspectives, planting the seeds for facilitating long-term investment strategies, which includes continuous financing opportunities. And it's really up to us to shape together the future of our economies and societies. Thanks for your attention, and thank you again for having me as a host and launching this conference. Absolutely, I was going to invite that. Now, I must say I'm not a specialist of research and innovation. I'm an economist, so this is a topic that I don't deal with every day, but I'm happy to share views and thoughts. I'm a bit short, so I take this off so I can see you.
Comes to you if you like.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question about, you mentioned how the absorption of these funds in the European Union is very uneven between some countries and others. And I wanted to ask if you can give us more details about the strategy of the EU. So does it work on a one-on-one with countries? Is there a strategy for the entire European Union? And is it really a matter of strategy, or is there such a thing as an innovative culture that does not exist in certain countries and exists in others? And so how do you develop that? Is it something that can be, the EU can do anything about it? Or thank you.
Well, on the second part of your question, this is the whole purpose of having big objectives for a 7-year period. We call this our 7-year multi-annual framework, and this is the way that we actually set ourselves priorities to move forward from the previous programming period to the next. And innovation is one of 5, I think, of these major building blocks. So this is the way that we try to influence mentalities, businesses, consumers in Europe, so that they are more alert to technological development and what it can bring and what it can change in our societies. And they can help, when faced with the more longer-term issues of aging societies in daily lives, to improve the way that we provide services to an aging population, and we provide healthcare. So these are really areas in which we have a lot to gain from building this innovative culture. And I think this will just not simply, but it will permeate. If we didn't have that objective at all, we'd probably talk less about innovation and technology in the EU. And there are, there's a benchmarking exercise by which we like working with these targets, so we see who's spending more on R&D, etc. But it's also a kind of peer pressure. This has traditionally been the way that the EU functions, with looking at your peers and saying, "Oh well, I'm not doing so well compared to the EU's average. Maybe I should invest more in this field." And this is also an incentive for our member states to invest in those in the areas that I noted. We were talking about structural funds. Now, the structural funds are a complex animal, but there's a way to influence the structure and prioritize within those funds to try to fund primarily certain developments in the regions, and this is our instrument to make countries or regions rather converge with one another. And this is the whole philosophy behind it. And when you prioritize topics and fields from one programming period to the other, it helps to give a boost to some regions and help this kind of convergence machine, which has been one of our great successes in Europe. You've seen countries develop and converge rapidly after their accession to the EU. In the recent waves of accession, it's blatant that, you know, after accession, there has been a real boost in terms of economic development.
Your presentation. I have a question about the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. What are the next steps for the European Union for passing this in the U.S.? The Congress has to agree and pass before the president signs it. And what are the next steps on the European Union side?
On our side.
And what are the biggest challenges you think of interest groups, societal and state interest groups? Thanks.
Right. So compared to the US in the decision-making process, the EU, there has been a mandate which has been proposed by the Commission, and the Council has to agree to that mandate, and that's the next formal step, so to speak. I think before these announcements were made, there were consultations with a wide variety of state and non-state actors before launching even the idea of a TTIP. So that's the way that we sense what interest groups at large would like to see in there. But formally, now both sides have to go through their formal processes, and then hopefully we are able to launch something by summer this year, and we'll see how it goes, without prejudging of anything, but because these negotiations are always very difficult and can be challenging. So we'll see how this goes moving forward. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. I was wondering, though, you speak of the kind of natural link between the U.S. and the EU, which certainly facilitates a lot of collaboration. I'd like your thoughts on how innovation and collaboration can work across less easy partners, especially thinking about the emerging the BRICS and other emerging economies. And also, especially since a lot of the emerging economies have large populations that are very poor and for whom high-tech and highly technical scientific solutions are going to have a limited amount of traction for solving their problems. They will have some, but it seems to me that the agendas of some of these emerging economies around innovation and productivity may have some different kind of frames than what we have in the US and EU. So I'd love your thoughts on that.
I think I see what you're getting at, but the way I see it is probably by being a bit more optimistic, because I sense that technological innovation is going to be key for these emerging economies to integrate much faster in this globalized world. You can now do transactions and banking with a cell phone, and that actually facilitates access to our networks, to other opportunities for doing business, not only with the EU and the US, but also among developing and emerging economies. It goes all ways, and I think I see technology and innovation rather as facilitating the development in those economies as well. So I'd be slightly more positive.
You for your speech. I would like to follow up on the TTIP question, because recently at the last State of the Union, the President Obama mentioned about a transatlantic free trade area, and this was actually mentioned in the last December EU summit by Cameron and Merkel. So I think it's going to be a little bit more developed, and so what's your opinion and your thoughts on this?
These are, again, political announcements. There's, as your predecessor mentioned, there has to be an approval by Congress on this side. On our side, it's also a negotiated procedure with the member states. On our side, we launched, what do we call it? A feasibility study, or something to assess. It's a study that assesses the potential gains from such an agreement. And this has been published on a few days ago, maybe a week ago. So I think there's good grounds for launching such an agreement, but all the fields within the agreement have to be negotiated, obviously. So we are really encouraged on both sides by the political levels. Launch in these speeches, but nevertheless, there is also such an agreement requires deep negotiations with all the stakeholders, and it's a process. So we'll engage in that direction as soon as we can have this mandate from our perspective, of course, when it's agreed. And it will, definitely from the study that was published, you see that it will be a positive contribution to growth, and this is what I'm interested in. But it also requires, deeper thought and negotiation. So we shouldn't, put there's a saying in French, mettre la charrue devant les bœufs. We shouldn't preempt what the result might be.
Good afternoon. I have a question about based on the data that you use and that you use to calculate the coefficient of how innovation and competitiveness is going further as the target. I would like to know your opinion in the sense of how you compare the largest group and the most innovative with the least innovative, and what is the average in real terms. And my second question is in regards the in-trade EU low skills, because as you mentioned, you talk about R&D, that is the high skilled labor force. But what is the innovations of the policies that the EU have in terms of low skill to integrate the migration that is going to affect the EU in this couple of years?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah. I have to remember.
With the Lisbon strategy, everything was about employment and innovation. So I was wondering, what's the relationship between the new strategy and the Lisbon strategy, and how is it that employment fits within the whole picture or the puzzle?
Now, the Horizon 2020 is only part of the strategy. It doesn't mean that we threw the employment strategy out of the window. This is only part of it, because this is the focus of this talk. But it's only 1 out of 5 of our objectives, okay? No, don't misinterpret me. There are also employment objectives. Our main objectives remain jobs and growth, as you know, and these objectives are fundamental to our growth strategy. So to answer the second part of your question, within the funds that we provide at EU level, again, I'm talking about the European level, much is being done at member state level already. But we have social funds to improve the employability of people that are transitioning from one job to the other, to improve job search at European level, to improve the quality of services provided by the public employment services. So a lot is being done there to help those who find themselves in unemployment at some point of their career. But there are many other initiatives. The youth initiative that has just been launched for younger people, the younger fraction of our labor force that is sometimes in some cases in high difficulty. I'm thinking of countries in the periphery of Europe that have been hardest hit by the crisis, and there it is paramount to help youth get on the right track again, get back on the jobs path. And the first part of your question was about targets that should be reached. Now, the 3% is indeed an EU average, and some countries are already beyond that, other countries are below that, but we come up with national targets as well, so that every country can make progress, but at a pace which is commensurate with its capabilities, of course. So I can't give you details on how these things are calculated. This is not the field that I look at every day, but I can come back to you later on and give you some details by email. Absolutely, I'll find that out. Okay.
Thank you very much. And I don't want to keep us from our drinks, but let me just ask a question about another Geneva organization along the road from the institute where you got your PhD, namely the WTO. Because, as you know, there have been some very interesting cases in terms of intellectual property rights, Airbus, Boeing, Samsung, Google, etc. So I'd be very interested in whether you are optimistic about the possibilities of the EU and the US knocking the courts and the lawyers into shape to make all this possible.
Thanks for this question. The way I view this issue is the following. In the WTO, indeed, there is a very efficient dispute settlement mechanism, and we should really count on it to solve these cases. We are currently entering in this kind of talk about the TTIP, all right? Not only because multilateral efforts have, been hampered in the past few years, but also because we truly think that it would be beneficial for both sides. When it comes to topics like intellectual property right, etc., I think it's also a good occasion for us, in the context of those talks, but also more broadly, that we talk about these issues and that we see if we share a common view, or at least we are ready to recognize our principles on both sides, and maybe a first step recognize mutually what we are doing, but also a more ambitious goal would be to achieve common ways of thinking about such issues. I would hope for the more ambitious level. We'll see. But as I said, this is really a matter for us to define on which path we want to be, on which path for growth we want to be. If we want to be on a road which is average, or if we want to be on a higher road. And it goes for higher quality products, higher quality food, higher quality everything, but it also goes for standards and the way we think about our standards globally and how they can be more even across the globe. Yeah.
Of course, no problem.
No, very briefly. In fact, it's more a consideration than a question. I think that you are here also to present the European Union reality under the framework of the economics and development, in order to present European Union to the American reality, and thanks for coming here in Miami. But beside the strong presence of European Union Center of Excellences in many prestigious universities, and then I can see that Miami is the stronger presence because we have two very important universities that are combined in this effort to spread European Union knowledge. But in general terms, the perception of the European Union in America is quite feeble, especially in the common people. Not of course at the university level or higher level. So I think that the work that you, the European partners, are doing is very good and should be, if it is possible, strengthened also at the level of colleges, schools, because the perception must start from the beginning. But of course, the delegation is in Washington. I don't think that you have other delegations spread all over the United States. And the project that has been approved, this test case that has been approved just recently, I think in the last weeks or months, to delegate some diplomatic institutions of the member states within the United States to not to represent, but to help facilitate the work of the delegation in order to spread the knowledge of Europe. It's a good approach. I know that for Miami, we are just starting now. Spain has got this endeavor up to June next year. And from June next year on, for 1 year, I think, it will be the time of Italy. So I think this is also a way not only to strengthen the presence, but also to work with the member state directly in this field. Grazie.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. I'll also add that we have a nice project targeted to high school students, and Christine Cayley is our best advocate in this region. It's called the Euro Challenge. And this is a project that is really dear to our hearts because it blends knowledge about the Euro area and more broadly about Europe, because when students come to us and are interested in participating, we tell them about the history of Europe, etc. And Marcus kindly accepted to give a lecture on Europe last time I was here. And I think it broadens their knowledge about Europe, but also about economic concepts. And I think it's a nice way of introducing Europe to high school students. So my hope is that this project grows and grows. We had over 100 schools interested in participating this year, and I'm hoping that this will grow. It was launched in 2006, and we'll definitely continue to promote this project. But I would really like to think deeper about your remark on students, because that is really, in my view, the way to start at a young age. You plant the seeds of curiosity in the minds of young people, and that is really, it's really, a gift that we're giving to students. You're becoming curious about other people's troubles, in the case of the crisis years that we've just gone through, but also you become curious about another geographical area, and it's very important in my view. So. I would wish to see this network grow and to, if I can, I'm always happy to go and speak to students. I do it very, very willingly, anytime.
Again, for your speech, I really enjoyed, especially the conclusion when you mentioned that we are here to shape together the future, the successful future of our economies and societies. And I actually would like to address the second part about societies, which is the job of the public sector mainly and social scientists. You mentioned a lot about research and development funds that do invest in high technology, in natural sciences mostly. Will I be correct saying that actually most of these funds support this type of again, high technology and natural sciences, while research in social sciences is underprivileged. Is it left for the country, national, on the national level for countries? Or don't know the cases.
I think you are right. I think you're right. In this programming period, we really focus, and the aim is really to focus on innovation. So we do a lot to fund projects in natural sciences, technology, IT, and this is true. I must say that I'm not sure I have the whole set of information there, because I really focused on innovation and projects that are targeted towards innovation. So I have a slight bias here. Social sciences. Well, I come from a background in social sciences, and I do think that it's important in shaping our societies, and I think we're quite good at it in Europe. We're quite good at teaching social sciences, economics, political science, and we create people who know how to think about societies. And these are the people who then take up jobs in the public sector, as you mentioned. But there needs to be a good blend, a good balance between those two. And I think your question relates to that. It gives me food for thought. Thank you for the question. I don't have a definite answer for you there. I think it was a very good comment.
There was about 10% for social sciences and humanities. Okay. So whenever there was a pie chart, because I'm a humanist.
So you look at that little slice, okay.
5% of the 7% or whatever, but there was always a small from FP7 anyway.
And there probably is. I just didn't focus on that part. Yeah. Thank you.